Few things I actually forgot to mention for this video that I've already recorded. But the biggest thing is not really so much people in the main roster being traded. It actually was the NXT roster being brought to the main roster. They only announced 3 on television. And the 3 was Finn Balor, Nia Jax, and American Alpha. Here's my thing. If they're going to bring up Bayley, Bayley's pretty much a big deal. So I would have actually televised that if they are going to bring up Bayley or Austin Aries or Bobby Roode. Anyone from NXT, the NXT roster should have been televised. It should not be something that's on the network. It should have all been televised. All 6 of them. Not just the main roster. They only had 3, and then they're going to have the other 3 on the network. That wasn't right. If they honestly did want to have people drawn in, a lot of people really want to know who those 6 people were going to be. And we had a feeling that Finn Balor was going to come up. And we had a feeling that that Bayley was going to come up. But it would have been nice if we actually did hear them on television for just NXT. Yeah, you screw the main roster. You could have put the main roster, then finished the rest off on the network if you wanted to, even though I think that was dumb. But other than that, all of NXT should have been on the main primetime TV for everybody to know, especially if Bayley's gonna be coming up. That's a big freaking deal. Or Asuka or Shinsuke. But if it was Shinsuke, more than likely he was gonna be televised anyway. But I doubt it's gonna be him or Asuka. But honestly, if it was Bayley or Bobby Roode or Austin Aries, should have been announced. Just saying. But here's the rest of my review. Well, people, that was the draft. Now, they actually have the... Well, I want to get into that later. And that's going to be one of my major gripes. But I guess I should mention it. They did start a 3rd hour on the network. I am not going to be watching that. But the thing of it is that I've actually did write down all of the roster that they had when it was televised, including how many heels and how many faces is on each show. And as you can hear, I spent most of my time yelling, so my voice is gone because I'm majority pissed because of false advertisement, especially for their pay-per-view Battleground, which makes me not really so interested in watching it anymore. But anyway, when it comes to this draft, they made a really big deal about it being on SmackDown, and especially the fact that SmackDown was going to be live. So I was actually happy because finally the underdog, the B Show, is getting credit where credit is due. SmackDown has always been known as a great wrestling show. A show where you can actually go for... Occasionally they have some decent storylines, but mostly it's for the wrestling. So if you're a wrestling fan, not a WWE wrestling fan, you would actually watch SmackDown because of the wrestling itself. Not just because of the storylines and over-the-top gimmicks that they have on Raw. You would actually go to SmackDown for wrestling in its purest form. Well, close to its... Well, just wrestling in its overall form. But tonight's draft definitely was just a teaser. That's all that it was. It just tricked you right and left. It was so one-sided, it was ridiculous. And it made SmackDown once again seem like the B Show that will never get credit where credit is due. I'm not saying that they're going to always outdo and outshine Raw, but it would have been nice if it felt like it was competitive. It doesn't feel that way anymore. It feels like it's just extremely one-sided and it's just corporate. Just literally put their hands all over this thing. Now, what I mean by this is that Raw's new roster is ridiculously long. Like, serious. This is what I wrote down. And I know you can't really see it, but as you can see on what I wrote down, the one I have was on the right. Well, this right, this is all Raw. That's all of Raw's roster right there. And look on the other side. SmackDown barely has anything. Now, as you can see on here, and I'll read it out to you. SmackDown got Dean Ambrose, AJ Styles, John Cena, Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, Becky Lynch, The Miz and Maurice, Baron Corbin, boy, American Alpha, Dolph Ziggler, Natalya, and Alberto Del Rio. Now, this is just for the televised. I did not record anything that came from what was on the network, and I'm going to get into that later. But anyway, so far on the televised version, it has 7 heels and 5 faces. They're pretty much the most balanced, or getting close to it. Now, let me read off Raw's. Raw's got Seth Rollins, Charlotte, Finn Balor, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, The New Day, all 3 of them, unfortunately. Sami Zayn, Sasha Banks, Chris Jericho, Rusev, and Lana. Kevin Owens, I'll get into that later too. Enzo and Cass, Gallows and Anderson, Big Show, Nia Jax, Neville, Cesaro, Sheamus. And that's all that there was for the televised version. Now, they had 10 heels and 7 faces. That's going to probably increase. The heels may increase because Stephanie's a heel. I don't know what Mick is, but Mick can be a heel too. But honestly, they have more heels than faces. It's not completely off, maybe off by possibly 3, but SmackDown by far is closest to being balanced. But I can't really say the same thing about Raw. They're a little off. But other than that, they got 10 heels and 7 faces. That's a lot of heels, man. But other than that, you know, I have decided not to actually watch the WWE Network, and here's why. Because they have made such a big hoorah about it being on SmackDown Live that it literally gave you the false impression that they're going to do the entire draft on the show. But they never told you that they're going to complete the final hour on the network. Now, everyone's like, okay, well, it's because of the wrestling. Why have wrestling matches with no stipulations? For every draft that I remember that's ever happened, there's always been a purpose for each match. Each match always meant 2 or 3 draft picks, or maybe 1 draft pick, or whatever else extra, or a trade, or something like that. More than likely, it was draft picks. If you had a match, and if it was a tag team match, you have two extra draft picks for a particular brand if your team wins. And the same thing with the singles. You'll get an extra draft. If it's the main event, you'll get 3 picks. Other than that, there was always a stipulation for every single wrestling match. And it made sense. I know they tried to make it a SmackDown show, but SmackDown was about the draft. I would have made it a SmackDown show after the draft was over that following week, and not make it a SmackDown show tonight. It should have been all about the draft. I'm just saying. Now, the one thing that kind of bothers me the most about it is Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. They have literally promoted the crap out of this, making it seem like this was going to be the last match. I know everyone's like, well, what about once in a lifetime or twice in a lifetime? Yes, I understand that. But they literally advertised these 2 individuals recently that this was going to be their last match, and then all of a sudden they get drafted on the same show. Really? Really? I have never been more angry in my life when I heard that. I'm like, gosh, this is the match that's supposed to be awesome because it's going to be the last. It was special. You guys made it special, and then you just blew it. I have never been so upset. Ever. And I think I skipped somebody for Raw, and that's Sasha Banks. I can't remember if I actually said her name or not. But yeah, Sasha Banks is on Raw. But honestly, guys, I was just so pissed. Number one, they never told you that they're going to show the final hour on final hour from SmackDown on the network, and then they promoted the fact that Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens was going to be the last match. We didn't get that either. They're going to actually prolong this thing. And nobody freaking mentioned Roman Reigns. There is no continuity at all. No consistency at all when it comes to WWE. There was a moment when I thought they were going to be consistent, especially about the past. I mean, Kane was definitely consistent when it came about being the GM when he was talking to Shane, but that got thrown out the window real quick. The one thing that kind of made me laugh was that Stephanie talked about how disgusted she was about Roman Reigns and him being in trouble with the wellness policy. Now, he ended up being the 4th draft pick for Raw. Nobody mentioned anything that he's done. The one thing that could have helped Roman Reigns, and I actually feel bad for the dude right now. The one thing that could have helped Roman Reigns was the fact that he could have been drafted to SmackDown, put on the B show, and lifted up like the underdog he is. Don't get it twisted. I don't like how they promoted and how they booked Roman Reigns. I don't like the fact that they made him a superhero too quickly. But after he somewhat fell from grace, they should have had him on SmackDown for him to be built up. Especially having Daniel Bryan as his mentor. They should have done that. But unfortunately, he's still on Raw. He's still being awarded, and he's going to be hated. Unless they decide to turn him heel. And then that'll probably be about, what, the umpteenth heel they actually have on their team. That's the only thing that I'm thinking. If they have decided to literally pull the trigger on turning him heel, then that's probably why that he's on Raw. Because, and this is the one thing that that my homeboy Laurel was talking about when I was talking to him on Messenger. His overall theory is this: that Raw is going to be for the hardcore fans, and the casual fans are going to watch SmackDown. That's his overall theory. The way that the roster is set up, he believes that the casuals are going to go to SmackDown and that the hardcore people are going to go to Raw. Because everybody who is a hardcore fan already hates Raw because, number one, it's too daggone long. And number three, we see matches over and over and over again for 3 hours. And did I mention how doggone long it is? It's a very long show, especially if it's boring. So that's his overall theory about the thing. But as for the draft itself, it was a corporate sham. It was. They made this thing to be completely special and a huge change for SmackDown. To make SmackDown promoted the way it should be. To where it should be equal, on an equal playing field. Or at least have the equal opportunity that Raw does. And I know they're like, well, it has to work its way up. The thing is that SmackDown's been around maybe not as long as Raw. But SmackDown, if they're going to have competing brands, they need to have some sort of footing. And if Vince wants to make them like a dueling brand, they're not really giving anything to SmackDown. They're giving them bare bones. So what are they supposed to do? Like, how are they going to be competing with Raw when Raw got far more people than SmackDown could ever have? SmackDown barely has any star power. Actually, SmackDown only has maybe a few folks on their roster that's considered star power. They don't got much. While Raw got majority of the heels, you got SmackDown that got the potentials. And maybe some of the underdogs as well as some of the outcasts. That is all that SmackDown has. The outcasts, the underdogs, and the potentials. That's all that SmackDown has, which is good because it shows that they can actually be a decent show. But they have to make do with the bare bones that they got. While Raw got a whole lot on their staple. Seriously, they got a whole lot of food on their table. And they got a huge spread for anybody that wants it. While SmackDown got a table this big with like an apple on it. Like, seriously. But honestly, it just seems so one-sided. And it bugged the crap out of me. And even if I actually did watch the final hour on the network, it just seems pointless. Because all of this was just made for Raw to look good. And this is supposed to be about SmackDown going live. SmackDown's gone live before. This ain't new. Like, it's not completely a new concept of SmackDown going live. SmackDown only went live for limited amounts of time. Maybe for like 1 day out of like a year or something like that. Like, they didn't go live a lot. But they're going to be like Raw. They're going to go live practically every Tuesday now. So, and they made a big deal out of that. But my question is that why do you have your flagship show eclipsing the B show on the B show? Like, why are you having Raw completely eclipse SmackDown on its show when you did everything, went far beyond the Call of Duty, paid so much money for advertising this thing, only for Raw to overshadow it? It makes no sense. Everything about this draft was one-sided. Everything about this put a bad taste in my mouth. I don't know, and most of this makes me not look forward to Battleground. Like, before, I was kind of hyped up by how everything was set up. I was really hyped up by Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. But now knowing that this crap is going to continue, I'm like, gosh, is anything going to happen? Anything new? They keep talking about the new era. We represent the new era. We represent change. I love me some Shane. But there's nothing but BS coming out of his mouth. Like, seriously, it's just crap. Like, utter crap. I love me some Shane, but I have not seen any ounce of change yet. The only change that I have seen is the fact that Dean Ambrose is still champion. For now. After Battleground, who knows? But other than that, I haven't seen not 1 ounce of change. I haven't. I would actually prefer the McMahons not even be out there. I would actually prefer the GMs being the one to do the pick. Because I would have more respect and admiration towards the GMs, because the GMs have been a joke over the last few years. If you want the GMs to be taken seriously, then have the GMs make the pick. Have them go over it with the commish, but have them off the screen as much as possible and have the GMs take over. Because that's what they're going to have to do when they're somewhere else. So I would have been fine if it was Daniel Bryan and Mick Foley out there making picks. That's what they should have done in the first place. But honestly, it just bugs the ever-loving crap out of me how I really felt that SmackDown was going to have a bone thrown at them this time. But it seems like that once again they're going to be giving crumbs, and Raw's going to be giving nothing but the meat. It's ridiculous, man. It really is. But honestly, you could tell that the feuds that are still continuing, more than likely you're going to see the people that are still in those feuds on that show. Like Natalya and Becky Lynch on the same show, as well as Sasha Banks and Charlotte going to be on the same show. You can kind of expect that to happen. But the one thing that also bugs me the most is the fact that the freaking New Day is still together. And I don't know why. Seriously. The New Day has ran its course. There is nothing awesome about them anymore. There's only so many jokes that there's so many juvenile jokes that you can make without it going stale. Don't get it twisted. There are times that they are hilarious. And I laugh my butt off when they have their promos. But it's to the point where I am so tired of New Day that it is time for them to go. And the messed up part about it is that they're the most over tag team in the WWE at this point. Besides Enzo and Cass. Probably a little bit more than Enzo and Cass. But other than that, I would say this. They're not going to let them go. I was hoping that Xavier Woods gets drafted to SmackDown so he'll be able to do his singles push and have Kofi Kingston and Big E work together. Because Big E ain't ready to go single. His singles push sucked. It still sucked to this day. Kofi Kingston's probably on his way out anyway, so why don't he be in a tag team that is supposed to be happening, because they're the ones that actually do all the work, and have Xavier Woods be on his own. Like, I would have been fine if Kofi Kingston and Big E got drafted to SmackDown and you had Xavier Woods stay on Raw for the Cruiserweight division and have him be in the Cruiserweight division. I would have been fine with that. But that didn't happen. Who else got split up? Well, the Wyatt family. The family that had the most potential to be the biggest psychotic faction in the history of WWE. There has not been a psychotic faction that has as much weight as the Wyatt family. And they decided to split them up. Bray Wyatt, I believe, is going to SmackDown. Yep, I'm right. SmackDown has Bray Wyatt. We don't know where the other two's going to go. As well as Luke Harper. But more than likely, why split up the Wyatt family? There is so much they could have done by making these guys dominant. But it actually does throw the whole compound meetup completely out the window. Like, everything that built up for that point. And a lot of people have all this hoorah about the Fall Deletion versus the compound segment. Honestly, I already have my opinion about the Fall Deletion, and I ain't going into that. But I am gonna say the compound segment had some weight. It made the Wyatts look like the psychotic faction that they are, and it made them look scary and dominant. But now, unfortunately, they threw that out the window, now splitting them all up, and it's pointless now. Which shows that they are going to lose against the New Day at Battleground. Everything that they had that pushed them to be dominant is now gone. And if it's because of that tweet, it is freaking sad. It is. You had a huge amount of potential with an amazing group of men, with a psychotic faction that we haven't seen ever, that has worked And I'm not talking about a tag team. I'm talking about a psychotic faction. If I'm wrong, name one in the comments below. Name one that people can remember. But the Wyatt family in this generation is the best psychotic faction I have seen in years. And they have decided to split them up and keep those jokers of a New Day together. They're a bunch of jokes, in my opinion. They're becoming a joke. They are. And they have a huge amount of potential. They could have brought some seriousness to the New Day. Instead of making them a bunch of unicorn horn wearing, booty carrying boxing people, whatever. All I know is that their gimmick is stale and stupid. And it's time for it to go away, far away. But unfortunately, everybody's into that garbage and they're going to still stick with it. But other than that, I can rant about the New Day all day. But my overall thoughts about this draft is this. It was a corporate joke. It is. They have hyped us up about this draft for a while. And unfortunately, it fell flat for me. Everything seemed one-sided. Raw seems more dominant than SmackDown on their own freaking show. They barely got anything. Not to mention that the split-ups made no sense. You had the New Day all staying together when it's a given that they've been teasing them to break up for a while. And then all of a sudden, they stay together in a group and they get drafted to Raw. You break up the Wyatt family. A family that had the potential to be scary, as well as not only scary, but also dominant and strong. You broke them all up. Any potential of bringing anything else in the Wyatt family is done. Yeah, that made plenty of sense. Seriously. And then you have Raw that has twice as many heels as SmackDown. Everything seems off. I'm sorry, it really is. I hated this draft. It didn't feel special anymore. The one thing I will say is this. They actually have done a good job at the first match. But I found it interesting how the first match, when they actually didn't have any interruptions, they actually had the commercials on the side and they continue to show the match, which is what they should have done for the last few years. And it was really, really good. But I found it funny that it was a John Cena match that they did that to. And then throughout the entire night, they didn't do it anymore. Like, we literally went through commercials and then we came back and there was a brawl. And we're like, wait, when did this all start up? Like, seriously. I don't really know, man. It don't feel special anymore. If they do this thing once a year, I hope they make it better. I hope they do it better next year. Because this was a dud. And I'm very disappointed in this. And some of the matches for Battleground that was based off of some of these picks now don't even hold much weight. I don't know, y'all. All this stuff about the draft now is completely overhyped and done and just burnt me out. But I want to hear your thoughts about this. What do you think about the draft? Do you think that there was an actual point in having matches when there was no stipulation to them? Did you really feel that Raw was actually going to allow SmackDown to be competition instead of swallowing them whole like a snake to a bird? Seriously. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts about this draft, and just leave it down in the comments below. I'm burnt out. I got no voice. I'm done here. Nature Girl 30 signing off. Peace out. Later.